Hello everyone. Just trying to get my lighting here. Okay, so I'm here. Good morning. Happy Sabbath to those who are Sabbath keepers. Welcome to our regular visitors. Yes, Pastor Madlala is not here today. It's me, Pastor Blosse. I'll be taking you through the Word of God this morning. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Tagarajan Jovu. Hello, Kajen. Kuzwayo Kumbu Madlala is also watching. Hello, ma'am. Stobile Mapalala. Hi, guys. Welcome. So I'm still just trying to set myself up here in a way that will not, so that we can just, yeah. So just to get an indication, am I audible here? Am I visible? My afro. Okay, so my afro is going out of control here and showing a football pitch at the top there. But do not laugh at the pastor, for bears shall descend upon you and consume you. All right. So this morning, enough of the jokes. This morning, I wanted to, maybe let's wait until we get to about 50 people before we start. I'll just do a bit of monkeying around for a little bit. I know that we are going to move to lockdown level 3. Level 3, not in the not so distant future. I think on Monday we're moving down to level 3, and I know that a lot of you for the first time are looking forward to a Monday. For the first time in your life, you're looking forward to a Monday. So yeah, we're moving down to level 3, but I've got a critical question, an important question that we need to answer, that I think it needs to be answered, especially by those amongst us who are not necessarily married. And the question is, ku-level 3 ungena nobani? Wena, ku-level 3 uzongena noba? Noma uzobutwashuza wedwa nje, ku-level 3 futhi. Level 5 uwedwa, level 4 uwedwa, level 3 uwedwa. Akushintshi lutho nje la kuwena. Ungena noba ku-level 3. Usuyikhethile ingoma ka-level 3. All right. Of course, that is a joke, bit of humor to break the ice before we get into the message this morning. Okay, so I wanted to just for us to look at a passage that I think, a story rather, in the Bible that is very common amongst us and very common in church circles, and it's been preached quite a number of times. And what I love about this story is that it is very applicable across a broad spectrum of situations, right? I want to look at this story because it's very applicable. It finds application in many instances, and in many situations. And so that's why even now, as we face the prospect of an uncertain future, we face the prospect of an unclear future, I thought, let me just go back to the story and maybe take us through the lessons that we need to pick up. And of course, I'm talking about the children of Israel's exodus from Egypt towards the promised land. But I want to focus on their experiences in the wilderness, right? Now, here's my introduction, and this is now where the sermon begins, okay? By way of introduction, right? When the children of Israel were in Egypt, right? They were slaves. That's quite clear. There's no running away from that. The children of Israel were brutalized. They were exploited as slaves in Egypt, right? They were not even secondary class citizens in Egypt. They were nothing more than just utensils and tools of labor. They were just used to further the ambitions and the goals of the Egyptian empire. But they were not part of the empire. They were just tools of the empire. They were not beneficiaries of the empire. They were just tools in the empire, right? So for in the eyes of the Egyptians, the Israelites were no different to a hammer or to a saw or to a shovel, right? For short. They were all the same, right? And so their presence in Egypt was not just a presence or a time spent in slavery, but it was also a time spent in them being stripped of who they are, of the humanity and their being, right? Because here's what needs to happen, right? Before the Egyptians could oppress them, they first needed, this is the Egyptians, they first needed to convince themselves that the Israelites were less human than they were, that the Israelites were not actually quite human, maybe they were closer to being animals than human. And then they come up with a system to ensure that the Israelites buy into this idea that they themselves, the Israelites, are not human, that they are subhuman, right? Then what the Egyptians do, and this is common across all forms of oppression and colonial projects, right? What then the imperialists will do, or whatever the colonizer will do, is that after convincing himself that you are not human, he then goes and convinces the oppressed that they are not human, so that they can accept their condition, right? That they can be okay in their condition. Then the colonizer or the imperialist then sets up a system, right, that will make sure that at every turn the slave is faced with messages that affirm their subhuman status, right? That so wherever you go, wherever you turn as a slave, you find messages that lead you to accept that you are a slave. And that's what the Egyptians had done to the Israelites, right? But maybe even more dangerously, what the Egyptians then did, right, is that they then structured their society and the economy in such a way that the one who labors, right, is the one that is deemed important and valuable. So as a slave, you have no value outside of labor. Unless you are working, unless you are producing something, unless you accumulate things for the master, you are useless and you are pointless, right? And therefore, they will chuck you out and they will throw you out. I need to set this background so that we can understand where we are going, right? Number two, right? After the Egyptians or the master, convinces the slaves that their significance is in their ability to produce. It is in their ability to make things. It's in their ability to be productive, right? What the master then does is, because you're a productive slave, right? Remember, that's your status. You never move from that. Because you're a productive slave, I'm going to provide food for you. I'm going to provide lodging for you. That's housing. I'm going to provide health care for you, medical aid, right? So that you are well taken care of as a slave. Now, you must remember that whatever the Egyptians do for the Israelites, it is never for the benefit of the Israelites. It is so that they can keep the Israelites alive long enough to exploit them for longer. All right. So they don't do this because out of the goodness of their hearts. They do this because they need the Israelites to remain alive. They need to keep the Israelites alive and healthy so that they can exploit their labor, so that they can extract as much benefit from them as they possibly can, right? Now, when God comes down, this is now in Exodus chapter 3, right? When God comes down to deliver the children of Israel, right, from the clutches and from the hands of the Egyptians, when he comes down to deliver them from the system, God is not just coming to deliver a people who are aware of their humanity, who are aware of who they are, right? And I want you to go to Exodus chapter 3, right? When God meets Moses, right? And I want you to listen to God's words. So when God goes and delivers the children of Israel, right? He's not just going there to deliver a people who are aware of their humanity, who are aware of who they are, right? He's going there to deliver a people who have forgotten that they're humans, who have forgotten their humanity, who have forgotten their value outside of labor, right? Now, I want you to see this. These are people who are used to being busy and who are complimented for being busy, who get pats on the back for producing, right? Remember that. Remember that. Everywhere they turn, they receive messages that affirm that they are not human and that their humanity, or rather that their value, is only in productivity. It is not in anything else outside of being productive. Then God comes to Moses, right? In Exodus chapter 3, right? And of course, you all know the story, but I want you to take it from verse 7. Then God says, I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt, and I've heard their cry because of their taskmasters. For I know their sorrows. I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and bring them up from that land to a good and large land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites and the Hittites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppressed them. Come now, therefore, and I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children, out of Egypt. Now, I want us to focus first and foremost, right, on that introduction by God to Moses, where God says to Moses, right, I have heard, right, I have seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt, and I've heard their cry, right? I have heard their cry. I've seen the oppression of my people. I've heard their cry, right? Now and now I have come down to deliver them. But then God also then turns around and says to Moses, you go. Okay. Now, you've got that background. You've got the introduction. Now, let me give you the context of this sermon, right? And I see Zamatonga is getting it, right? Because this sermon is so relevant, especially with what is going on in the States, right? Now, let me give you the context of this. Not only what is going on in the States, but also what is going on in the world right now, right? And this is the context in which I preach this sermon. And I'm hoping that you find relief, you find rest, you find peace in the assurance of these words and of this experience by the Israelites, right? So, now, here's the context of the sermon, right? It is that we are now moving out of a time, right? Out of a situation as people, right? Not just as black people, but as humanity, where we had a certain normal. Like, I hear people talking about, open the country, let's go back to normal, right? There is no normal. There is no normal. We're moving into a new normal. We're moving into a new situation. But before we get into that new normal, before we get into that new situation, what's going to happen is that a lot of us are going to lose jobs. A lot of us are already losing jobs. A lot of us are already laid off. A lot of us are already living off UIF. A lot of us have received our retrenchment letters. A lot of us have already been told that we don't even need to come back because the job and the work is finished. The company has gone under, right? And so we have been, and I want to use this word intentionally, we have been delivered from our labor, right? We have been delivered from work. And I say this to you, right? And I preach this sermon to you, not as someone who is unaffected. I, as you all know, as well as a worker of the church, as an employee of the church, have been personally impacted by the coronavirus, financially impacted by the coronavirus, right? And by the pandemic and by the economic meltdown that we are currently experiencing. So I don't talk about this as someone from the outside or talking down to you. I talk as someone who is also experiencing and in the fire of this persecution, right? And what is happening right now is that we're moving out of a familiar space, out of a space where we were well fed, we were well taken care of, and God seems to be allowing us to move into a wilderness, right? Away from Egypt, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. Away from Egypt and into a wilderness. We are going into a wilderness, a place of uncertainty, a place of lack, a place of poverty, a place of not having an ability to make a living. That's where we are moving to. That's where we are going to. God has delivered us out of the Egypt of our labor, and He has placed us in a wilderness. And I want to say to you, if you don't get anything from the sermon today, and if you're going to catch anything from today's sermon, and you only catch this, right? It's the fact that when God delivers, when God moves us out of something, right, into this wilderness, we have not lost jobs. We have not lost work with God. Especially when we are moving into this wilderness experience, what has happened is that God has delivered us from this from this need to find significance in labor, to find significance in productivity. God is putting us in a place, is putting us in a situation, in a wilderness, where He needs to help us rediscover our humanity. Just as He did for the Egyptians, for the Israelites, when He took them out of Egypt and placed them in the wilderness. What God wants to do with the Israelites, right, is first help them rediscover their humanity. That's why when He comes down, He first affirms harms their humanity. I'm not here for slaves. I'm not here for laborers. I'm here for my people. They remain people to God in spite of the dehumanization, in spite of them being disrobed of who they are for so long in Egypt. God has come down, not for slaves. He has not come down for their labor. He has not come down for their work. He has not come down for their productivity. He has come down because in his heart they remain his people. And so he's not coming here to deliver laborers. He's not coming to deliver employees. He's here to deliver his people. They are people first and foremost. They are people before God's eyes, before they are anything else. And so God says, I've heard their cries. I've seen the affliction of my people. I've heard the cries of my people. That's it. I'm not here for laborers. I'm here for people. I'm here for my people. I'm here for my people. And this is the God that we serve, right? Who at times allows us to be delivered from slavery, and especially the slavery that we enjoy, especially a slavery where we have found comfort in, especially dehumanizing conditions that have convinced us and that have taught us that our significance is in our ability to dress well, in our ability to access expensive things, in our ability to consume expensive things. And God says, when you are so caught up and captured by the slave mentality of finding significance in being able to produce, God says, I'm going to come down and deliver you personally. But the path of deliverance, before we reach the promised land, we have to go through the wilderness. And here's why we need to go through the wilderness: so that we can lose everything. We can lose everything. In the wilderness, there is nothing. All that we have in the wilderness is God. We don't have anything in the wilderness. We don't have jobs. We don't have security. We don't have cars. We don't have houses. They've been repossessed. The houses have been repossessed. The cars have been taken away. The jobs are closed. They're shut down. UIF checks have stopped coming. And now we are in the wilderness where there is nothing. And God is all that we have. In the midst of nothingness, then God being everything is even further highlighted. And so God takes us into this wilderness experience, right? Delivering us. You have not lost anything. If you move out of something, right, and you land in God's hand, trust me, beloved, you have not lost anything. You have been delivered. If you've moved from something and your landing spot is God's hand or God's presence, then you must know that you have been delivered. You have not been persecuted. You have not lost anything. That was deliverance. If whatever it is you're coming out of leads you to God's hands, that is not loss. That is deliverance. You have been delivered, right? And that's the difference. There are some of us who will lose things and not land in God's hand. Then you have really lost out, because not only have you lost the job, but you have also lost out on an opportunity to have God replace your job. And there are those of us. So when we have lost it all, make sure that you locate God's hand. Make sure, actually, let me not even go there. Let me not say make sure you locate. When you lose everything, be sure to make sure. Be sure to make sure of your surroundings. Are you surrounded by the presence of God? Have you fallen into the hand of God? Because that is real deliverance. But listen to this, right? And then God says, right, I've not only come down for my people, but I've heard their cries, right? And I've seen their affliction. Now, let me share this with you. The hearing here that God talks about, here, right, is not just the ability to discern and process sound. It's not just the ability to hear a voice, right, that is crying out. It is not just God hearing someone crying. I've got a 2-week-old baby here in the house. Oh no, she makes sure that we hear her. And when she cries in the middle of the night, no matter how deep, no matter how exhausted you are, no matter how deep your sleep is, when she starts crying, we wake up, right? And we go to and we go and try and take care of her. Sometimes I act like I'm sleeping and I can't hear her, and then the wife wakes up and she's the one who takes care of her, right? And she cries, right? And she cries. So, and I hear her, but that's just me being able to discern the sound and the noises that she's making. See, my child, right, is 2 weeks old. All she has is just crying. She can't do anything else. All she can do, I want you to listen to this, right? All she can do is cry, right? All she can do is cry. But behind the cry is an expression of need, right? Behind the cry, right? When my child cries, she could be saying, I'm hungry. She could be saying, I'm uncomfortable in my diaper. She could be saying, there's something wrong in my stomach. She could be saying, why am I alone? I need your presence. I need the assurance of your presence. I need you to hold me. I need you to pick me up. I just need the assurance. I just need the affirmation of knowing that you're still around. So when my child cries, when I wake up, I'm not waking up because I hear wailing. I'm waking up because I hear a need behind the wailing. Oh, what am I saying to you, saints? When God comes down to the children of Israel and he says, I've heard their cries, he's not just saying, I've heard sounds. He's saying, I've also heard the pain that is expressed in the cries. I've also heard the needs that are expressed by the cries. So when God comes down, he's not there to silence us. He's not there to I don't even know what to say this, how to say this in English. He's not there to zela us, all right? He's not there to say, shh, shh, shh. He's there to deal with the need that is embedded in the cry. He's there to deal with the need that is hidden behind the voices. He's there to deal with the pain that is embedded in the cry. He's there to deal not only with just the pain, but let me say this to you, saints. He is also there to deal with the things we are unable to say, the things that our experiences have deprived us of an ability to express. So God not only hears what we're expressing, but he also hears what we're failing to express. And that is what he's there to deal with. That is what he's there to address. Not only just what you have uttered, but also what you're failing to utter, what you're unable to say. You know you've got this need for something. You know what you need, but you don't know how to phrase it. Some of us don't even know what we need. And when we cry, God also hears not only the fullness of our cries, but also the emptiness of our cries, the inability to ask him for what we really need. And so when God says, that is why I have come down. Now, come on now. Let me take you, come up a bit higher, right? When we cry, we always assume that our cries ascend up to the throne of God, right? We assume that our cries go up to the throne of God. But God here says, right, I've heard their cries and I've been concerned. Let me say this. I'm concerned by the inability of my children's cries to reach up to me. Now, why is this a problem, right? Why is this a problem? Let me finish that sentence, right? I'm concerned about my children's cries not being able to reach up to where I am. Therefore, I have come down to where they are because they can't, with their cries, reach out to where I am. I have come down to where they are because I'm concerned of the quality of their crying. It is not complete. It is not full. I keep having to supplement their prayers. I keep having to add to their prayers. So I've come down so that I can understand what is it that has destroyed them so much that they can't even pray complete prayers to me? What is it that has destroyed them so much that they can't fully express themselves? So I've come down to be here to experience with them what is dehumanizing them, to experience with them what is destroying them, that they are even unable to connect with me. I know you think I'm talking about the children of Israel, but I'm talking about you right now, right? So I'm talking about you right now. I'm talking about you right now, where you right now don't sleep at night and all you do is wake up and cry to God, praying for God, not if he's not protecting your job, to give you another job. If you're not asking him to give you another job, you're asking God to protect the job that you have. If you're not asking God to protect the job that you have, you're asking God to steal other people's jobs so that you can get a job. Selfish prayers, self-centered prayers. Our cries are incomplete. Our cries are not only incomplete, but our cries are corrupt. And as we cry up to God, as we wail up to God, God is concerned by the incomplete nature of our prayers, by the self-centered nature of our prayers. And then he descends so that he can experience with us. What is it that is dehumanizing us? What is it that is making us fail to fully express ourselves to him? And God has come down. And when he comes down, he doesn't leave you where he found you. He takes you out. And at times when he delivers you from what he has found dehumanizing you, he delivers you into a place of wilderness, into a place of nothingness, right? And so we cry to God right now. You have no way of connecting to God. You have no way of expressing your needs to God. All you do is express what has dehumanized you. Come on, I hope someone is getting this. Right? When you pray to God, you pray for God to deliver to you the very thing that was used to enslave you, right? The Israelites in Egypt were taught that their labor is what made them valuable. You and I are no different, where we have been taught that what makes us valuable is our labor. And that's why some of you have said, during this lockdown, why must we return tithe when pastors are not working, right? For you, our value as pastors is our labor. It's in our ability to produce. It's in our ability to visit. It's in our ability to stand up and perform for you in front of the church. That's our value to you. Slaves, in your hands, using something as righteous, something as holy, as tithing, to persecute and enslave us. And so someone says, so where are they? I'm not returning my tithe. I'm going to be unfaithful so that I can, because they're not being slaves enough. They're not being obedient slaves. So I'm not going to be faithful. I'm going to withhold my tithe. I'm going to withhold my offerings. And it's good that you do so, because an offering that comes from a bitter place has no blessings. And so hold on to it until your heart is okay to let it go. But as you hold on to it, I want you to also know that your holding on to it is not just, you're not only just doing it because you see me as a slave. You only see my value only in my ability to produce. But you hold on to it because that's what you find your value in your ability to produce. And so you use your resources, right, to oppress others. You use your resources to lord yourself over them. You use your resources that God has blessed you with, by the way, to dehumanize them. You use your resources to strip them of their being until all you can see them is just laborers. That's all you can see them as nothing but laborers, right? And so, not only am I oppressed by your oppression, but you're also oppressed as you oppress me, right? And so we are all oppressed. And that is why God then says, burn it all down. Let's burn it all down. Right, let's take away the resources that they're now using to persecute one another. Let's take it all away, because these ones have forgotten what it is that really makes them human. It is not their ability to produce. It is not their ability to have money. It is not their ability to return a tithe. That is not what makes them human. What makes them human is my presence. And so I'm going to burn it all down. We'll take away everything, every ability they have to produce, and we'll take them to the wilderness so that they can discover their humanity, right? So that they can discover their humanity. And so as God takes them out of Egypt and he takes them to the wilderness, right? And he strips them of all that they have. He strips them of all the things that they have, and he places them in the wilderness. And when they have nothing, God then becomes their everything. But look at slaves. And I pray you don't fall into this trap. I pray you don't fall into this trap. And the slaves are in Egypt. are in the wilderness, delivered from Egypt, from slavery, delivered from being dehumanized, from being stripped of their humanity, delivered from persecution in the wilderness, right? And there in the wilderness, the slaves come up to Moses and they say, Moses, why have you, and they're hungry, right? Don't log off now, right? Don't log off. Nganyuka manje, nganyuka. I'm joking, right? Unzonyuka, but I'm joking about, because I have to be humble. So then, these guys come up to Moses, right? These Israelites, they're out of Egypt. They're no longer slaves, right? They're no longer slaves because they're no masters. They're in Egypt. Okay, I'm getting so many thoughts at the same time here, and I want to share this with you, right? But I'm afraid for your data, because I've got unlimited data, but also you're the one with the data problem. But here, okay, so these guys, right, are in the wilderness, right? They're in the wilderness. Let me share this point, right? They're in the wilderness, okay? And God has freed them. God has delivered them. They're no longer slaves. They're no masters anymore, right? They're in the wilderness, right? And then God says to them, right? And then they're hungry in the wilderness. They fall hungry in the wilderness. Then they say to Moses, Moses, we are hungry, right? We are hungry, right? You took us out of Egypt, okay? And you have brought us here to kill us with your God, okay? Now we are hungry. Was there no food enough for us to eat, right? Was there no food for us enough to eat in Egypt that you took us out of Egypt and brought us here to kill us, right? Take us back to Egypt. In other words, what these guys are saying, oh, Lord, have mercy, right? What these guys are saying, right, is that unless we can eat we have no problem turning away from God himself if he will not feed us. In other words, right, the Israelites had been so dehumanized, they'd gotten to a point where the only compass to their existence and morality was their stomach. The only thing that directed their lives was their ability to fill their stomachs. That they were willing to sell themselves back to the Egyptians as slaves again, for as long as they were guaranteed that they will have food in their tummies. The Israelites were so dehumanized, had lost their humanity to the point where they had reduced themselves to only finding significance in their ability to fill their tummies. Oh, I'm talking to you, black child. I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you, child, right? Including you who doesn't consider themselves black enough, but someone who is enslaved as I am because they find value only in labor. I'm talking to you who has once brought a talent to your parents, once brought a dream to your parents, and you told them that this was a calling, this was something that you couldn't sleep and see yourself living without doing. And when you presented it to them and your parents reduced you for the first time in your life, you were reduced to an entity that could only produce. You are reduced to something that should only live to fill its stomach. When your parents retorted and said, we don't care about what kind of talent God has given you. We don't care what passion you have. We don't care what gifts you have. We don't care what your purpose is. If it will not put food on the table, then you will not do it. I'm sure you've heard these words before. What do you think we're going to eat in this house with this nonsense that you want to do? And so for the first time we heard these dehumanizing words. They didn't come from the outside. They didn't come from the oppressor. They came from our parents, echoing the words of the oppressor, because they themselves were growing up in a system that only taught them that they were only valuable in as far as they could produce, in as far as they could fill their stomachs. And so when the children of Israel are in the wilderness, free men, able to choose their own destinies, able to live up to their own abilities, to pursue their God-given purpose, they reduce their being to just their stomachs. How much food did we have in Egypt? Take us back. We'd rather be slaves and full than to be free and hungry. Take us back to what dehumanized us. And for the first time in that cry, I then understand why God must take the children of Israel into the wilderness. Why God must take them into the wilderness. Right? That's why God must take them back. That's why he must take them through the wilderness. That's why he must take them back. He must take them to the wilderness. And that's why he must spend 40 years with them in the wilderness. Right? So that they don't find significance in their ability to work, but that they know that their significance is in God. So God takes away the opportunities to work. He takes them away. Right? They're taken up. Or rather, let me say this. Let me not be heretic. He allows the opportunities to work to be taken away so that God can allow them and build them up again with this new way of being. That you don't find significance in labor. You find significance in my presence. You are because I am. Right? That's why he says to Moses, tell them I am has sent me, because where I am is, you will also be. So I am, therefore you shall be. And so God takes them to the wilderness for 40 years, right? So that he can rework them and help them to rediscover their humanity, right? Then when they've discovered their humanity, then they can work, right? Blake, I hope you answered, right? So once they've discovered their humanity, then they can work, right? See, it's dangerous for a slave to be given resources, because the slave will use the resources to oppress others. Are you getting me? Right? It's dangerous to give the slave resources before you help the slave to see his own humanity and then to also see the humanity of others. And so you give the slave a chance to discover his or her humanity, then you give them resources so that they don't use their resources to dehumanize others. Okay, so God spends 40 years in the desert with them, helping them to become human again, in the wilderness, helping them to become human again. so that they don't start praying for their own oppression. They don't start praying to be taken back to oppression. I want to share this with you, and I want to close this off, right, with this thought, right? And I shared this with a group of people this morning, via WhatsApp on a voice note. And I said to them, right, that number one, it was work that ensured the survival of the Israelites in Egypt, right? My question was, why does God wait for the Israelites to be delivered from Egypt, right, and then gives them the commandments? Why does he deliver them from Egypt, then gives them the commandments? Why does he give them the commandments in Egypt? Actually, why doesn't he give them the commandments in the promised land, right? Why does he give them the commandments in the wilderness? Why doesn't he give them in Egypt? Why doesn't he wait until they reach the promised land to give them the commandments, right? Why are the commandments given in the wilderness, right? And then I remembered that, oh, wow. In Egypt, these guys were slaves. These guys knew their significance was derived from labor. That's all they thought. It was work that helped them to survive in Egypt. I want you to follow me closely. It was work that helped them to survive in Egypt. It was work that gave them significance while they were in Egypt. And so when God comes to deliver them, he doesn't give them the law, right? Lest they think they need to work their way out of Egypt. Come on, I hope you're hearing this, right? So he doesn't give them the law in Egypt because they will make the mistake of thinking that their deliverance is dependent on their ability to work for their way out of Egypt. So what does God do, right? He delivers them from Egypt. And the one theme that is consistent in this delivery is this: you be still. Don't move. Don't do anything, right? You be still. The Lord will fight for you. That's what God says. That's the structure. That's the architecture of their deliverance. It is you be still and God will fight for you, right? So when he delivers them from Egypt, they don't work for it, right? It is God who does it for them, right? So that they know that whereas in Egypt, their significance was in their ability to work, in God, your significance is in your ability to rest. Let me say that again. In Egypt, your significance was in your ability to work. In God, your significance is in your ability to rest, right? And so God delivers them out of Egypt. Then when they're out of Egypt, then he gives them the commandments so that as slaves, they don't think that they're working for a God or they're walking with a God who wants to be a master over them, but they're walking with a God who wants to be their father to them. My people, walk with them, not above them. Walk among them. Build me a tabernacle so that I may be among my people. God wants to move with his people. He wants to be among his people. I want to be clear here, lest you misunderstand me. I'm not talking about you resigning from work because you want to now rest. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about you leaving your work so that you can go and sit and have God sustain you. I'm talking here about to people who have lost their jobs and who are going to lose their jobs. I'm saying to you, right? Don't panic. Your significance before God is not in your ability to rest. In your ability to work. Your significance before God is in your ability to rest and to trust him, right? Trust God that wherever he's leading you, even if the journey is through the wilderness, that he will deliver you to the promised land, right? And also trust that when you have lost it all, God is there to present himself as your all, right? And so I'm not talking about people who have the security of work. You've got a luxury that many of us can't afford and don't have, right? Talking to people who are panicking that they're going to lose so much in the time ahead. And I'm saying to you, you may have just been delivered and that God, you're going to land on God's hand. And God is going to be your everything. He's going to be your provision. He's going to be your all, right? Now let me say this, right? And close off. See, my Bible is closing. My Bible is closed, right? And I lost my train of thought because I was trying to answer a question here, right? You know, and that's right, Blake. It's about resting in God, right? Even when things are not working out in our perspective. It's about resting in God, even when in the midst of uncertainty. It's not about resting when there's peace. It's about resting when there's restlessness. It's not about resting when you are on dry land. It's about resting in the storm. It's not just about resting when things start falling into place. It's about things finding you. It's about those things falling into place, but finding you resting, finding you content in God. Let me share this with you, right? Then God says to the Israelites, right, in the desert, and then says to them, remember the seventh day and keep it holy, right? And on it you shall do no work, you shall rest, right? In the desert, you'll rest, you'll do no work. Remember my Sabbath and keep it holy. Don't work, rest. What's God doing there with the Israelites? He's teaching them. He's helping them unbecome slaves who found significance in work. Rest. Learn to put tools down so that I can pick you up. Rest. To know that your survival is not dependent on your ability to labor and work. It's dependent on your ability to rest in me. Put it down. Don't touch anything. Rest on the Sabbath. So that slowly God begins to reorientate us into becoming human again, into becoming people again, His people. God helps us. As we unbecome, we become like Him. People who manage to see value in each other and value in ourselves, even when we have nothing, even in the wilderness. May the Lord add a blessing to the reading of His word. Don't panic. Don't be scared. God's got you. Don't panic. Don't be scared. God will provide. Don't panic. Don't be scared. You are safe in God's hands. Just don't be scared. I'm saying this as a father of two, head of a family, if you will. And I'm not even sure if by the end of this year I'll still have an income. I'm not. That worries me, but it certainly doesn't destroy me, because I know that I didn't get here by myself. I'm not where I am because I made my way here. It's been God leading me through. And even in this desert and in the wilderness that lies ahead, it'll be God that pulls us through, and that pulls me and my family through, pulls the families of my colleagues through, from the Cape Conference all the way up to the TOC. It's God who will be leading us, who will be pulling us through. Don't panic. And that's why I can be here this morning. And I don't wanna log off, right? Because I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying interacting with you, right? It's human interaction has become the new currency in the midst of isolation and the lockdown. Interaction has become the new gold, the new water. You know, so I don't want to log off because I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying talking to you. So we don't panic, right? We don't stress. We don't fret. And I'm preaching to you now. I'm talking to you now. With all these problems and all these stresses, you know, I'm able to be here. I'm smiling, and I'm not faking the smile. It's genuine. It's coming from the depths of my heart. And I'm saying to you, you're not alone. Sisonke. You're not alone. Sisonke. Smaningi. There are many of us, right? And of course, I say this, you know, knowing that there are those of us who are ancestors in this world and in this walk of unemployment and not being able to afford anything, right? And that's precisely why we can't pray for God to take us back. We can only pray for God to move us forward, because going back means the sustenance and the continuation and perpetuation of some of the oppression of others. And so we don't ask God to take us back. We ask Him to move us forward. Now we're all unemployed, and suddenly we discover our humanity. May God bless you as you traverse the wilderness. Don't get lost in it. Don't get swallowed up by your hopelessness. Don't drown in your despair. But trust God. Trust Him. He's got you. And He's been doing this for many years, for thousands of years, millennia. He's been doing this. He's been carrying people. He's been providing. He's been in this habit of becoming all things to all people, and he will be exactly what you need him to be. May God bless you. Let's pray. So God, I bring everyone who's watching now, everyone who will watch this later, everyone who's hearing this right now. I bring them to you, dear Father. There are those who are still safe and secure in their jobs, in their employ. I thank you for that. I thank you for doing that for them, oh dear Father. Thank you for keeping them safe. Thank you for sustaining them. There are those of us, oh dear Lord, who are losing our jobs. There's a threat of income losses, reduced income. I thank you again for that experience. I thank you for the assurance that while we may feel like we're losing things, we're actually being delivered into your hand. So, dear Father, as we rest and nestle in your hand, help us not to panic and help us to allow you to lead us. There are those of us, oh dear Father, for whom unemployment is not a new thing. They've been in this for a long time. They're used to it. It doesn't scare them anymore. In fact, what we call destruction is actually their normal lives. What we call income loss is actually for them their everyday lives. And so, dear Father, I pray that you'll be with them, that while you deliver us from the slavery of searching for significance from labor, you also deliver them from the slavery of finding significance in their poverty. Deliver them now. Don't wait until they reach heaven before you bless them. Bless them now. Bless us all in the wilderness now. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen, guys. Take care. God bless you. Love you all. Love your families. Love yourselves. And love your neighbors as you love yourselves. May God bless you.